loud. And we're on. Let's pray together. Father God, thank you tonight for your presence in our lives in a time that might appear to be chaotic and unknown and confusing. You are the God that is rock solid, the anchor for our soul, the shelter in the storm, the one that we can hold on to. And so we just celebrate you and glorify you this evening in the name of your sweet and precious son, Jesus. And Lord, we're thinking as we begin this evening about John Malloy, asking you to be with him as he continues to prepare his message for Sunday. And Lord, for Linda, as she's struggling a little bit with her computer and not feeling well, that you would give her victory over the obstacle and that you would give her healing for her body. And for the rest of us, as we jump into your word, we just ask, as always, that you would reveal to us individually, collectively perhaps, but individually for sure, those things that you know these folks that are gathered with me need to receive from you tonight. So our hands, our hearts are open to you. Be honored in what we do is our prayer in your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Good. Hey, there's Vicky. Whew. I wasn't sure you were coming there, girl.
I was coming.
All right. And
I just go on Facebook and you're right there. And tonight I had to type everything in. I don't know what was going on.
All right. And you came in after we said we were going to practice muting and unmuting when it's time to talk, just to, keep the background noise going. I don't know if you've ever watched the tapes afterwards, but if I'm talking and then I take a breath and one of you coughs, there you are. Everybody gets to watch you cough. Very special. Okay, we're in Matthew, the 6th chapter. This is where Hal wanted to jump right in. He's excited about starting at verse 16 to 18. We want to talk about fasting. Yeah, let's see. Look at Hal smiling already just at the thought that we're going to do it. Okay, here we go, folks. Matthew 6:16. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Okay, fasting. Let's just lay a little foundation here before we get into those verses specifically. There is only one fast that is required by God of the Jewish people, and that is the fast on the annual Day of Atonement. But there are a bunch of fasts recorded in the Old Testament and also in the New, a bunch of fasts in the Old Testament, and they kind of had this same situation related to all of them. It was a whole body response to grievous or severe conditions. It was a crisis. Fasting means a human refrains from water or food or both for a limited period in response to some sacred or grievous moment like death, the threat of war, sin, our neediness, or fear of God's judgment. And so while we might think, oh man, there's a whole bunch of fast we need to be looking at and observing. In actuality, there's only one, just the one at the Day of Atonement. All the others were reactionary fasts. You might recall that in Nehemiah, Nehemiah calls the nation to fast as he says, look what we have done. We need to confess our sins and the sins of our ancestors that have allowed us to get our country and especially our sacred city into rubble. And so that was a reactionary fast. And so in the Old Testament, we see the one that's called for by God, many reactionary fasts. But by the time of Jesus, fasting had become a bi-weekly act of piety or holiness for many observant Jews. Nowhere again in the Old Testament are the Israelites told to fast twice a week, but by the time of Jesus, they had been fasting every Monday and Thursday, and it was common. And so there's some scripture, I didn't grab the reference, but you might recall one time the Pharisees got very, very upset at Jesus and his disciples because they weren't observing the fast. Well, the fasting that the Pharisees were talking about was this bi-weekly fast. And as such, the disciples really weren't violating any of God's commands, but they definitely were not abiding by the traditions of the Jewish leadership. Okay, so let's get to the verses, and this is one more time we get to use our sheet. Okay, so go back up to 16 and 18, and let's just read through it, and you tell me what's the observance. Take yourself off mute when you got it.
The observance was fasting.
When you fast, what's the
When,
prohibition?
The word is when, not if, when.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in a minute. What's the prohibition?
Don't look like it.
Don't look like it.
Don't look like.
What's the intent of these people who are looking like it?
Pride.
So everybody knew
Thought that they were
fasting.
holy.
Yeah,
They get credit. Yeah.
Yep.
To
They
get
want.
credit.
Yep. They want everyone to know, don't they?
Yes.
So Jesus says, when you fast, don't make a big deal of it. Don't make a show of it just to get people's attention, because if you do, what's the reward?
Nothing.
Recognition
Well,
from-
people will honor you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. And that's about all you get.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's the alternative observance?
Fast, but don't let people know you're fasting.
Put
Yeah.
makeup on.
Yeah. Do life in a normal way. Okay. And what's the reward?
Heavenly Father.
Be in heaven
Yeah, God will bless you somehow.
from God.
Yeah.
You'll
The
take care of
Father, you can hide from people as much as you want, but God always sees.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
what he sees is what he then is, looking forward to rewarding. Okay, Ileana said, hey, look at the magic words there. When you fast. Why was that significant to you, Ileana?
Because it's not, well, it doesn't seem to be an option. He's implying that they should fast,
Okay.
or we should fast at some point.
He
I
doesn't say
guess.
if you fast, he says when you
When you
fast.
fast, exactly.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's implying so much that you should, as much as he's expecting that they
It's
will.
expected that you fast.
Right.
Okay. Well, if it's a when you fast, of course, we already figured out that for the Jewish crowd he's talking to, it might have been if you're around the Day of Atonement and you're doing God's fast. Okay, please just don't make a big deal about it, even though everybody knows we're fasting because it's the Day of Atonement. And then he says there's all those reactionary fasts, and then the tradition that says twice a week. Okay, when you fast, application for us, when should we fast? Think about it. I'll tell you what.
Mondays and Thursdays.
Mondays and
Isn't that what you said?
Wednesday
No.
for the class.
Okay, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, there's a trend I think we see in the modern church when we think about fasting. Not always, but I think very generally my experience has been that in the modern church, we fast when we want to get something. When I want an answer, when I want direction in my life, when I fast in order to get something. Okay, Hal, you're not liking that. Tell me about it.
No, I'm not. No, I just think that probably the best thing would be to fast in order to become closer to the Heavenly Father.
Closer to
Okay.
Period. I just don't. I don't buy. There's no reward that I'm looking for
All right.
if I do that.
Okay.
And I think people not only look for a reward, but sometimes they feel like they want to hear from God. And that if they fast, they can hear from God. But it
Yeah.
usually has to do with the fact that they're up against something and they want to hear from God and get his direction.
It's a
Okay.
really good point. Probably the best time that we should fast is when things are going really well. That's a good point.
Yep.
We
Yeah.
should just be in awe and worship the Heavenly Father. That's all.
Okay. In the spirit of the reactionary fasts of the Old Testament, perhaps we ought to fast sometimes when we are aware of our own personal sin.
Mhm.
Perhaps we should fast when our church or the church in America is going astray or is in a crisis.
That's a good one.
Mhm.
Perhaps we ought to fast when our nation is in crisis. So
So
there
we
might
should all be fasting right now.
I was
Yes,
just
sir.
going to
Yep,
say,
yep.
okay, I give. I'm going to quit eating.
Shouldn't have eaten all day.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
shouldn't have been eating all week.
A week, yeah.
I didn't
2020,
fast
this is
today,
one to
but
remember.
at some point I got on my knees today
Yes.
and I said, God, you know what is happening? We weren't expecting this outcome. And I was very disturbed, but you know what? God is in control. And then I said, perhaps this situation that we live in now is what we needed. And also our president needed to, if he gets a second term, to humble himself, because sometimes, not sometimes, we always have to come to God and put everything in his hands and don't be so arrogant.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. Perhaps fasting, which is not, necessarily, in style, if you will, in the 2020s, but perhaps it should be. And perhaps it could be sometimes my awareness, I need a whole body response to a sacred issue or a severe issue. Or as Hal said, maybe I just need whole body attention to hearing from God. Okay. So it implies that when you fast, it implies we will. And
Mhm.
Jesus says there's a not good way and there's a good way to fast. Okay. And I don't know that necessarily means, if I, as your, one of your pastors was to call us to a Monday morning fast, for some purpose. Okay. If you're going to abide by that, we all know that the church, Avalon Church, is going to be fasting on Monday morning. But again, I think the principle here is that I'm not calling you to tell you how hungry I am and how emaciated, I think we get the principle that hypocrisy, right,
Yeah.
is the challenge that he's got here. In fact, he even says, don't do it like the hypocrites do. Remember, hypocrite, an actor. Hypocrisy robs us of reality in our Christian living. We just get cheap substitutes. I think hypocrisy robs us of our spiritual influence because we're kind of token in what we're doing. And the most important, this is just a great quote I picked up from one of the studies. The most important part of the Christian life is the part that only God sees. The
And
most important part of the Christian life is the part that only God sees.
Yeah, and I guess like anything else, because we may fast and we may not tell anybody that we're fasting, but maybe we're fasting for to check a box and feel good about it, and God knows that too. So
Yep.
the attitude of
Yeah.
our fasting, is important.
Very good. Any other thoughts or comments about fasting?
Yes, you'll all know I'm not a hypocrite. I do not fast.
Wow. Okay.
You can tell by looking at me that I don't fast.
Oh.
And so we're all going to hold a fast tomorrow and pray for Vicky. Okay, y'all on board with it? Okay. No. Very good.
It's okay, Vicky. I don't fast either. You're not the only one.
Well,
Good.
let me encourage you, though. Let me encourage you to consider it sometime.
Yeah,
Uh,
I haven't done it in a long time.
yeah, but and not as a brownie point, not as a checklist, not even as a, oh God, I'm fasting so you'll be coerced into doing something for me, but more just the, gee, Jesus, when you said when you fast, I don't know what that looks like. And there's a ton of books out there, that have instruction, about how to enter into and come out of a fast of 1 day or 3 days or 7 days or 21 days or Bill
40.
Bright used to fast 40 days every
Wow.
year. Yeah.
Well, I've got to tell you a story. Many years back, I used to fast, I would say pretty often. I haven't done it for quite a while, but it so happened. And it was almost every time that I decided to fast, a colleague of mine would come to the office with a box of donuts. And it was like, oh, why? Oh, why? How many a times I succumbed because, donuts, after all.
Yeah.
Oh,
I get it.
God.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Jesus is going to shift now. He's been talking about spiritual disciplines. He was talking about giving. He talked about praying. Here he talked about fasting. But now he's going to shift to a section about lordship and possessions. Lordship and possessions. So here's what it looks like in Matthew 6:19-21. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Wow, he's going to get real radical on us because Jesus knows human nature. Jesus knows our human nature. So let's go back to the Old Testament for just a moment. And if you look in Joshua 24, Joshua 24 verses 15 and 26 and some of it's the nation of Israel answering God and saying, we're 100% for you, tell me, Joshua is saying, choose you this day who you're going to serve. And they all cry out in unison, we will serve the Lord. Okay. Literally years later, and not many, you go to Judges 2, verses 11-13, and they've totally forgot who God is. In the space of 2 generations, we went from people who had come out of Egypt in the Exodus, through a generation of children who heard their parents talk about coming out of Egypt in the Exodus, to a generation who said, who? And so Jesus is, understands that we can easily say yes. Oh yeah, Jesus, I'm your follower. Oh yeah, Jesus, I'm your disciple. But he's going to give us a section here and says, let me tell you what that really looks like. I want you to count the cost. We're going to talk about who you're going to serve, who is your God, and you can't be double-minded like the nation of Israel ended up being back there. Okay, so he starts off by saying, do not store up treasures on earth. Think about the crowd that is sitting around Jesus at that moment. What kind of people are they when it comes to treasures?
They were pretty poor.
Yeah. Yeah. This probably went, yeah, I could just see someone going, well, duh, Jesus. What do you mean store up? I just, I'm day to day here. Remember your prayer? Give us this day our daily bread. What do you mean store up? But this was probably a really interesting statement to make to a crowd of people who, for the most part, weren't able to store up anything. But he wants them to get the principle. Okay. What are the treasures on earth? What do you think?
Material things.
Okay.
Nowadays will be material things. But back then, probably material things too, but maybe not the ones that we're used to.
Well,
now.
and I must say, in Ileana's case, it's shoes.
That reminds me, I haven't bought a pair for a while.
It could be.
I'm not kidding.
We know that. Ferragamo. Okay. It could be the accolades of people.
Yeah. Let's throw this definition out there and see what you think about it. Treasure, the accumulation of things that are the focus of my joy. The accumulation of things that are the focus of my joy.
Well, and maybe then he's talking about what you look at as a treasure, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
That you
Anything-
value.
Yeah, anything that's not leading you to God that you value then would be a treasure.
Yeah.
Sometimes treasures could be our children.
Could be. Okay.
Things that you buy that you don't need, but you like.
Nubia, I need everything. What are you talking about?
No.
I don't understand.
When I go to the store and I look at something that I liked, now I'm using that. I talk to myself and say, Nubia, do you need that?
Good.
And no, I don't. So I keep walking.
What is the fate, according to Jesus, what's the fate of earthly treasures? What are they subject to?
They get destroyed. They get stolen.
Yep.
They're not eternal. They're
Yeah.
temporary.
They don't last.
Yeah. Jesus talks, he gives 3 words, moth. In some translation, it says rust, but the word literally means an eating away. So, vermin is what you get in the NIV, but moth and vermin and thieves. Moths attack what generally?
Clothing.
Clothing.
So I'm collecting clothing. That's my treasure. Look at my wardrobe. Jesus says moths just eat it.
Moths attack shoes.
Stop it.
No,
I'm
no.
sorry. I'm
I-
just in a jovial mood today. I'm sorry.
Listen, Pastor Jim is retiring in February. We have time for
Okay,
counseling, okay?
Jesus says you've some of the things that people might value and treasure and accumulate and put their joy in is their wardrobe, their clothing. He says, and I tell you, moths eat it. Some people might find their accumulation and their joy and their security in the collection of grain that I have stored in barns. Not so big to us in Orlando, but if you grew up in Iowa or Nebraska, you would really get this. Okay. And he says, if you know what happens sometimes to grain that's stored up in barns, the rodents come and eat it. And so your clothing's not safe. Your grain is subject to rodents. And if all else fails, somebody's going to steal it. Debbie?
I was just going to say some of that also is stored up as security.
Yeah.
You know, because you're feeling insecure, so you store things or hoard things or keep things out of fear for a time of want.
Like toilet paper.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Does everyone have toilet paper? Hopefully, yeah.
No, we don't use it.
He has banana leaves.
Or one of those days.
He probably has
Like
a bidet in his house.
Ileana, like in the camp, you know, in the farms, the old time.
Corn.
So Jesus just
We
trying to
gotta
tell
turn the
us,
microphone off here.
when you try, to store up earthly treasures, and I don't think he is, if he were talking to us in the flesh today, I don't think he would tell any of us not to buy an extra package of toilet paper when you go to Publix. Okay. I don't think that's what he's getting at. I think what he's, trying to tell us is that if our focus, if our joy, if our dependency, if our security is locked onto things that I can hold in my hands here on earth, I'm in big trouble because of moth and vermin and people who steal stuff. So it's not, I don't think he's saying there's things that they're, I don't think he's saying that there's anything really wrong with the things of the world. They just have to come in second best. It's not wrong to possess some things, but it is really wrong when things possess us. Hal got that. Hal liked that.
Well, I always told Ileana, if I could afford it, I would never own a really fancy car like a Rolls Royce or something like that. I would never do it because I used to, well, I still have an old 2004 Toyota Highlander, right? So when I pull a Toyota Highlander into a parking lot out at a mall or grocery store, I don't care if somebody runs a cart into it or decides to key it or whatever. That's no big deal to me. It's got scratches already. But if I've got a brand new Rolls Royce, I'm going to have a problem with that. So you know what? I don't own that car anymore. That car owns me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what can happen to us.
Yeah. And when the car owns you and you're worried and focused, and even though I'm going to take my Rolls out for a ride because it brings me so much joy, but the whole time you're overwhelmed with anxiety because someone might ding your Rolls Royce, I think Jesus is saying, and that is the issue with being possessed by things. Okay, so he says, make sure things are in their proper order and you're not possessed by them. So don't lay up here on earth, but lay up treasure in heaven. Okay, what's this treasure, do you think? What kind of treasures do we lay up in heaven?
It's open.
When we help the needy.
We help the needy. Okay.
I think every time we do something to further God's kingdom, whether it can be helping the poor, it can be preaching the gospel, it can be anything, but teaching Sunday school, it can be baking a casserole when your neighbor hasn't been feeling well. I think anything we do because we love Jesus lays up treasure in heaven.
Yeah.
That's good. Well
I'm
said.
gonna bring you a hybrid of verses out of 1 Corinthians and Colossians that together say, whatever you do in word or deed, do it in the name of Jesus to the glory of God. Whatever you do. And so all of a sudden, Vicky's taking the casserole next door to the neighbor. It can be a really nice lady named Vicky taking a casserole to her neighbor, or it can be Vicky fully aware that I'm about, in Jesus' name, to the glory of God, going to take a casserole to my neighbor in a prayerful approach that says, Jesus, if there's any way to impact her or their lives through this casserole, I offer it on your behalf. To me, that's two different things. I think Vicky gets credit for taking the casserole just because she's a nice lady, but I think treasure is laid up in heaven when whatever I do in word or deed, I do it in the name of Jesus to the glory of God. I also think Jesus probably has already given us in the Sermon on the Mount some ideas about what deposits, if you will, into the treasury of heaven are. Show mercy. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the peacemakers. Endeavor for peace. Turn the other cheek. Go the extra mile. Those two. Maybe we can summarize it like this. When you get to the end of 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, and it talks about what lasts. What lasts? Love. And so I think when we walk and exercise love, that we are making deposits in the treasury of heaven.
Yeah. Greatest of these is love.
Yep.
Jesus is.
And if I'm distracted by keeping my Rolls Royce safe and my Rolls Royce shiny, I probably am not giving much attention or focus to love. Okay. Summary about possessions. 3 things. All things belong to God.
Yeah.
We say it, but boy, it's hard for me to embrace that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Should I believe that God has gifted me with finances and led me to buy a Rolls Royce, who's the Rolls Royce belong to? God.
Absolutely.
And at that point, he may say, you need to use that Rolls Royce to pick up poor people and bring them to church. Whoa, no. Custom leather seats, God, pay attention. Okay. He says, nope, my Rolls Royce. And I have a challenge sometimes remembering that all things belong to God. Here's the second thing about possessions. I think Jesus is telling us that people are always more important than possessions. People are always more important than things.
Yeah.
And finally, wealth is always a secondary good. It's not the primary. When Paul talks, you may recall in 2 Corinthians and Philippians, various places, when he talks about why God might grace you with wealth. What does Paul say is the reason God might grace you with wealth?
To help others.
So
Further
you
the
can
God,
help.
further the kingdom.
Yep. Yep. So we can so we have everything we need necessary to help other people. Okay. Treasures on earth, treasures in heaven. Where your treasure is,
That's where you're
there your heart will be also.
Yep.
And I ha about that at church about why are you a Georgia Bulldog fan? Because both my kids went there and a lot of my money went there, and where your treasure is, there's your heart also. Yeah. But we know this, don't we? We know this. Any comments on this storing up on earth and heaven and where your heart is? Ah, good. You guys are rocking it. All right. He's continuing with verses 22 and 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Wow. What do you think about those verses? Challenging, huh? A little bit?
Well, the eyes reflect many times our inner selves,
Okay.
our feelings, our whatever we feel. I don't know. Sadness, happiness, hope, hopelessness, anger.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking of it in terms of the kinds of things that we allow into ourselves.
Okay.
You know, just thinking of media today and the kinds of things that are out there in the media, on the internet, et cetera, kinds of things we allow into us. They come in through the eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be careful of that.
Yeah, and kind of what Hal was saying, what you're focused on.
Yep.
Where's your focus?
Yep.
Okay.
It kind of goes back to don't hide your light under a bushel. If you've accepted Christ as your savior, then the world should be able to tell that just by looking at you. You shouldn't have darkness inside of you anymore. You should
Right.
just have Christ's light.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, the light, the eye is a gate. So much of what enters into ourself comes through the eyes. To the point that Jesus, in the hyperbole said, if what's coming through your eye is not a good thing, pluck it out.
Yeah.
And if the lens of our eye is out of focus, then we bump into things. And boy, if the light is not entering, the light of God is not entering, and we're just full of darkness, that's a horrible darkness. Do any of your translations have the word, talking about the eyes here, have the word single and evil in the verses? If you're perhaps in verse 23, it might be, but if your eyes are single.
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Some translations have, talking about the eye that says if it's single, as in single-minded, but in the Greek, that the word single that's in some translations is translated as generous. And the word that's translated evil in some of those translations means stingy or grudgingly. So Jesus might be saying this, if we look at some of the Greek variations. He might be saying there is nothing like generosity for giving you a clear and undistorted view of life and of people. And there is nothing like grudgingly and ungenerous spirit to distort your view of life and of people. Because he just came, he was talking about possessions, and now he goes and all of a sudden he's talking about, we go, well, why are you talking about the eye?
Yeah.
But there is a Greek, translation possibility. It says, if you are generous, okay, boy, you have a clear, there is light coming in through your eyes to the inmost part of who you are. But if you are grudging and ungenerous, maybe even to the extent of bitter, then you've got a distorted view of life. Your lens is out of focus. It's going to be darker or dark inside. Just interesting. All righty. Wow. One verse. Verse 24. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and whoa, where are we? Right, and money. Sorry, lost my place. Okay. All right. No one can be a slave to two masters. Okay, we'll step back for a minute. Think about the crowd gathered around Jesus' feet. What would be their understanding or their experience of slavery?
I'm sure that many of them had been slaves at one time or another.
Okay.
And a slave is single-minded. He has only one master.
Yeah.
They definitely knew what the role of a slave was.
Sure. Yeah. They might even as an occupied country, not necessarily owned by one person or one family, but ruled over by an empire. Back to Jesus saying, if a centurion tells you to, orders you to carry his backpack go ahead and go 1 mile, go the extra mile. That's a form of slavery, if you will. They really understand this probably better than we do in context, but to them, Jesus is saying, you are either a slave to this or a slave to that. And you all know what it's like to be a slave to something. And it means that whoever you're a slave to, he is your master. Okay. In the Old Testament, Jacob might kind of illustrate this for us. Jesus is saying you cannot serve God and anything else you sense you must have to be happy, content, and complete. You can't serve God and anything else you sense you must have to be happy, content, or complete. Think of Jacob, Rachel, and Leah. Jacob wants Rachel. Rachel's father enters into a sly deal with Jacob. And who does Jacob wake up to the next morning after his wedding?
Leah.
And how did he feel about that?
I'm sure he was thrilled.
Yeah, that's pretty much yeah. And so now we enter into this, hey, you tricked me. And Laban says, well, that's okay. work another 7 years. I know you already worked 7 to get Rachel, but work another 7 and you can have Rachel. So now you got Jacob with Leah and Rachel, 2 masters. Which one was the favored?
Rachel?
Rachel.
Which one got probably all the attention?
Rachel.
Rachel.
Which one had the favorite children?
Rachel.
Yeah.
And
Oh
poor,
no, Rachel had the Joseph and Benjamin.
yeah, poor old Leah is left hanging out there to dry, because poor old Jacob was what James described in James 1:8. He was a double-minded man that was unstable in all his ways. I know I should love Leah. I'm trying to love Leah, but I must have Rachel to be content, happy, and complete. Okay, so Jesus is trying to say, and he's back. He's working in the realm of possessions, of course, but I think it has a big application. But a continuation of don't store up treasures, because you can only serve what or what?
Master.
One or the other.
One or the other. You cannot serve both God and money, is how it's translated in the NIV. Mammon, it might be in some of your translations,
Yeah.
which is broader than just dollar bills and quarters. It's mammon is what I own, my stuff, and I can either be enslaved to my stuff or enslaved to God, but I can't do both. Do you find that to be true? Do you believe that? Have you experienced that?
Yeah,
It is true.
I have.
It is true. Definitely.
It's true.
Okay. So is he make it real? Okay. You're going to, after you get done tonight, somebody, I'm not sure who that somebody is going to take you to lunch tomorrow, and they're going to ask you to help them understand what you think it means about you can't serve God and your stuff. You can't serve 2 masters. What would you tell them?
God's the one that allowed you to have your stuff in the first place. I think that has to be your foremost idea, that you serve God, and out of his goodness, he allows you a good life. He allows you to accumulate stuff that you need to have, and maybe a little bit extra.
I would probably tell the story of when I loved manna more than God, and the story of when I loved God more than manna, and the difference in me.
Yeah. And how would you characterize that difference, Hal?
I'm a totally different person.
Peaceful, no?
Huh?
Peace in your life.
Oh, yeah, peaceful. Yes, of course. Not worried about things, where the next nickel's coming from or whatever. I mean, it's just very calming.
Yeah. I think Jesus is teaching us the reality that, that his brother James talked about, in that verse, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, tossed about like the waves of the sea. I think Jesus is just really trying to tell us, you can't walk in both worlds.
Mm-mm.
You got to go left or you got to go right. You're either for me or you're against me. Because when you try to do both, you will be unstable and tossed around like crazy. And
Well,
when you come, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
When you make a lot of decisions every day, right? Every
Yeah.
day you make a lot of decisions. But if you're focus is on, quote, manna, end quote, the decisions go one way. If your focus is on God, your decisions go a different way.
Yeah.
And all those accumulate.
Yeah.
And you become this person or that person.
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, I introduced our, you know, this section, the transition from spiritual disciplines to lordship and possessions. Okay. Jesus talked about possessions with do not store, you know, and the verses about the eye could very well be translated about generosity versus being stingy. And now he's just very, you know, very plainly letting us know, I want to talk to you about lordship. Either I am the Lord or I'm not the Lord. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
And I've spent the majority of my, you know, my walk with Jesus trying to have one foot in either camp. You know?
Yeah, me
No
too.
will.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. And,
It makes,
and I,
it makes you think of the story of the man who was going to build all the extra barns.
yeah,
And then they said, you know, you don't know that you have tomorrow.
right.
You can't spend your entire life looking for what you can put away, or your whole life is gone already and you've just wasted it without looking at what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, good, good. All right. Any thoughts? Any other thoughts about serving two masters? All right. Very good. Well, we'll pick up here next week in verse 25, and we'll spend some time talking about worry. And if nobody's worried, we'll zing right through those verses and we'll get on to judging one another. But we might just need to stay there for a little while talking about how anxiety is not God's design for us. Good, good, good. Well, thank you again all for coming and sharing. Is anybody willing to ask God's blessing on our time and on each other before we go tonight?
Sure, I will.
Oh, Vicki, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving this time to come before you and to discuss and learn more of what your word should mean to us in our everyday lives. Help us to be more the people that you would have us to be, that are just thinking of you and what you would have us do rather than thinking about our possessions and what they mean to us. Take us all, I'm going to say take us home. It's not actually taking us home. Leave this site and bring us back safely next week so that we can learn more of you. I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, again, thank you all for joining us tonight. It's good to see you all, and I'll see you Sunday.
Night.
Likewise. See you
Alrighty.
Sunday.
Bye.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Bye.